We'd like to start out by thanking our valuable sponsors. Sense of Satisfaction by Cricket is the place for all your fragrance needs. Plus, she's got products to heal what ails your skin and your hair. Shop at scentsbycricket.com. Special thanks to our valued sponsor, John Travis, a financial coach and certified Kingdom advisor with Richard Young Associates, a registered investment advisor. Thanks goes to Anna Patterson, my sister in the Lord who faithfully gives to this ministry every month. And to our newest sponsor, LaToya Gerard of Preach the Word Worldwide Network. She is a valued sponsor and a major encourager regarding this ministry. We need and would love to have you as a sponsor. Absolutely no gift is too small. Please note the info regarding giving throughout and at the end of the show, and help us spread these testimonies around the world. Please note that the views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily the viewpoints of our sponsors. It's time to hear the story, make the connection, learn the lesson, and gain the wisdom. Are you ready? Let's get charged and be changed. The Sister Speak Brother Break Show. Conversations on grace, healing, and deliverance. This is Marcy Bush. Come on, let's journey together.
But he was one of those guys that never really went to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time he went and sought treatment, it had advanced and the cancer had spread to his brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in high school, so I'm really young. I'm 17, 18 years old. And it seemed like it happened pretty quick, but, I had these conversations, with my brother, Charles, and he's like, no, he was sick for a long. And I guess, again, being younger, you're not privy to these things. I'm sure they probably said, they're in high school, and Jackie, they're in high school, they don't really need to know all this or whatever. So it seemed to me that it happened really quick. He's like, no, it happened for a while. And, my dad, I know the way he thinks. He was probably saying, I have to go to work. I have to take care of these kids. I don't have time for this or whatever.
Right.
And I just remember he had gotten so ill, this very strong, patriarch of the family. I remember he got so sick. The one thing I remember when he was sick, I guess he was doing chemo at the time, and he always had this really nice, thick hair. And I just remember he was sitting on the sofa one day and he was sort of leaning back. And I remember he got up and there was this big clunk of hair that was left on the sofa.
Okay.
And, he was proud of the nice thick hair that he had. And so it was just crazy to me how quickly he was declining. And then all of a sudden he wasn't going to work every day. I never saw him took a sick day until this little span of time. And I just remember he had gotten so weak where two of my sisters, I remember he had one arm around one around the other, and they're basically dragging him to the bathroom. And I could feel his feet sort of sweep against the floor, saying that he wasn't really even walking.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty much like the worst and the weakest I had ever seen him.
Right.
And during this time, I'm working at Shoney's. I'm working the late Saturdays and Sundays because I was in school. So I wanted to work the weekends because that's where I could put in the most hours. And I just remember that I came in really late that night and I went to bed and I got up later than everybody else. And I remember it was a Sunday. It was a Sunday. So there was some after church people that had come over, and I'm thinking, why are these people over here? And I remember when I got up later than everybody else, I'm going straight out the door. I didn't even look back, and my dad's bed was kind of like behind me. I would have to turn around, and I didn't, but I just saw a few people there, went outside, and then they told me my dad had died. So that's why all those people was there. I had no idea, and it just happened so quick. And this was in March of '88. I graduated in May of '88, so he never got to see me graduate. This happened, just months before, I graduated from high school. So that was the big, I guess, turning point in my life that happened before I ever went to college. I mean, I knew he would be proud. He was, definitely an advocate, supported, education, wanted us to have a better life than he did, as we want for our kids. And
Mhm.
so, I didn't know how to really handle that. I was so young. I don't know how you're supposed to act or how you're supposed to feel. All you have is the automatic responses, which was, crying. And, even I think I took a week off from school. And by the
Mhm.
time I went back, it still wasn't better. Like, let's say if someone just innocently saying, I'm sorry about your dad, that just brought up these feelings again. So I didn't even really want people to say that, but people, don't know what to say and
Right.
they're just trying to be nice or whatever. Like mainly it was teachers.
Mhm.
And that eventually, finally got a little bit better, I would say after maybe 3 or 4 weeks
Okay.
where I didn't have that automatic response where I would, tear up if somebody would even ask about it. But then, I had to, head off to college right after that. But, that
Mhm.
was my reality. Now I'm having to navigate, college myself, figuring out, the financial aid forms, figuring out how I'm going to pay. Not that he was even in a position to pay for it, but, that just sort of compounded things. And I could have said, you know what, I'm going to delay going to school. I'm just going to take some time off, but perhaps the values that he instilled in me said, no, you need to keep going. So I
Right.
did. It
Right.
wasn't easy though. Like, I in the news we hear a lot about student loans and student loan forgiveness and all of that. And really my position, I mean, I didn't get into crazy student loan debt or anything, but I think about people like me that don't have mom and dad holding my hand the whole way to
Mhm.
say, this is how you apply for it. This is how you get scholarships. This is what you need to do. Not everyone has someone holding their hand to guide them and tell them how much you should get. Here's alternatives. Here's how. I had nobody doing that. I was the first one in my family to graduate with a college degree. So
Okay.
it was hard for me already. And, the only reason I didn't have crazy student loans was that, I'm following what I learned from my dad, right? I'm working my butt off trying to
Yeah.
get through school because that's the way I was taught.
Right.
There's probably other ways I could have done it.
Mhm.
I still, question, was that the best way to do it? Well, I was able to get through college. I was able to graduate, but I had a horrible GPA. Why? Because I was freaking working 2 jobs, working 40 plus hours a
Right.
week and
Right.
not and something had to give, so I wasn't a dumb kid. I was taking advanced classes in high school. I was doing good in high school,
Mhm.
pretty much straight A's. But by the time I hit college and I'm working, 2 jobs, um it we only have so many hours in a day, so my studying was really the main thing that suffered. I mean, I still got through,
Right.
but I wasn't proud of my GPA and I knew that I was capable of better.
Mhm.
But yeah, I got through school and everything. But yeah, I came off of a tough senior year, graduating from high school, going off to college.
Right. Right. Wow. And see again, I don't remember. I'm sure in that time I knew it.
Mhm,
Like I said, because we went to church together, because we went to school together. I'm sure I knew, but
mm,
I had forgotten all that. And even when you were talking, I just realized because I had been wondering, I was like, now were we classmates or schoolmates? So you graduated a year earlier than I
yeah,
did.
yeah.
Um,
You graduated 89, right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah. We were 1 year apart.
yes. Um, but yeah, so that's really, and like you were saying, there are a lot of times I know with me, I didn't have anyone to hold my hand regarding getting into college too. Now, what I do know, and although I loved the people, at our school, I got along well with administrators and counselors and all that. Even as I transitioned into being a teacher, I see that there is a lot of favoritism,
Mm,
um, and who gets what scholarship opportunities and what. Now, of course, I know that there are requirements. I know
mm,
that sometimes it's the top this or the top that, but those people have choices in abundance. And I specifically remember certain students being pulled out of classes by counselors, and you're like, of course, when you get back or when you're at lunch, what they called you out for? And you're finding out that it's scholarship opportunities. Meanwhile, you're sitting here like, they're pulling you out of the same classes I'm in, but I'm getting
Right.
nothing. And so you do just feel lost. I
Right.
didn't know about trying for things. So I can't even imagine then you with all the stuff, with your father passing away and all, with you being the first to graduate and having to navigate those things. So were you going to ask for help or did anyone nobody held your hand, nobody that you were
Yeah. Yeah. In my mind, when you ask that question, I'm like, help from who? Like that's where my head was. Help from who?
Mhm.
Who's going to help me? Who wants to help me? I didn't even have enough guidance to say, oh, find a mentor, or I didn't have anyone sort of telling me that. Now, like you said, there was guidance counselors, and you had these big, thick scholarship books back then. Now you can do a lot of stuff online, but you're almost like, and I hope that you and I can put a face to this whole um issue of the reality of some people that they don't have a lot of advantages and guidance when it comes to this, because a lot of my friends now, a lot of my adult friends, they tell their story. They started solidly at middle class, and yeah, my parents, they had money saved in a 529, and we visited all these schools, and every single weekend we would apply for scholarships, and my dad knew this guy at the golf club and he was able to get a scholarship. Those little things lighten the load, and it
Oh, yeah.
makes your sailing a lot easier. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that they had those
Right.
advantages. Like, I don't begrudge anyone. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping to, and my hope was to give some of those advantages to my daughter, to,
Mhm.
from the people that I knew, giving her guidance and things like that.
Mhm.
But if you don't have it, you don't have it, which makes our path and our road a lot bumpier,
Mhm.
a lot more rough, with a lot of question marks hanging over our head,
Yeah.
trying to fill in these pieces that nobody told us about.
Right.
And so we figured that out. But my thing was, who I had no idea who I would
Yeah.
even ask for help, or where to go. If I needed something, I would have to go read myself and go figure it out myself. I felt like it was all on my shoulder, all on me. Luckily I had the one coach that mentioned the scholarship thing, and I wouldn't go as far as calling him a racist, but that was a racist statement that he made. And
It
I'm
was.
sure, again,
It was.
it was the late 80s.
Yeah.
But he genuinely was just wanting to fill a spot on his team,
Right.
and he offered the scholarship to say, okay, I can give you something in return. So
Mhm.
that helped. And but between scholarships and grants, that's helpful, but then that only goes so far.
Yeah.
Luckily, I guess one big thing that helped me, I could say, was my brother Charles. He was in the military, so great service to our country. But he had come back when my dad passed away, because they allowed him to get stationed at Fort Gordon in Augusta. So
Mhm.
he was able to be here the last few months of my dad's living.
Okay.
And I just remember the first 3 years of college, I was able to live with him. He didn't ask me for rent. He didn't ask me to pay him. Not that I even had it, but I really appreciated that. Like,
Mm.
so that was help that I got, that, I really didn't think about at the time.
Right.
By the time my third year came, he got married, and he had the nerve to ask me to move out of the house, because, of course, he had to be with his wife. I get it. Yeah,
Yay!
yeah. Shame on him wanting to live with his wife. So then I had to get my own housing. Well,
Oh,
that's one of the biggest costs in college, if you don't have parents to stay with, which I didn't. So that's when I had to get student loans. So I ended up, I think, getting a student loan the last 2 years. The first 2 years, I was basically working full time and paying as I went.
mm,
So I appreciate having that little bit of grace for at
right.
least a couple of years where I didn't have to pay rent. He didn't ask me for anything. So
A great
I
blessing.
remember, yeah, and I was so I was living in Aiken, or living in New Ellerton, and I was driving to school every day to Augusta College, which was about 20 minutes. It's really close. And when I moved out, they had something called the College Station, which was housing for all the Augusta area schools. So it was Payne College, Augusta College, like Augusta Tech, and you could rent just like a room, and these were college apartments, they weren't dorms. So you had like 4 people in the room, everybody had their own bedroom, and then there was 2 bathrooms where 2 people shared. So it was a little bit more space than a dorm, and then you had a big common area. So that's where I lived for a couple years. But at that point, I just had way more going out than I had coming in, and that's when I had to get, the student loans. So, so yeah, I mean, I always say I have a love-hate relationship with student loans because I would have never been able to finish college without a student loan. But I
Yes.
know that it could get overwhelming. Like I had no guidance. I know there's plenty other people that really don't get a lot of guidance on how much student loans you should have. Even with technology and a lot of information out there, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're looking for. And so that's why so many people inadvertently end up with a lot of student loans. Not everyone is purposely taking out, a ton of loans just to go, live it up.
Because Jackie, if you don't have anything, I mean, because like you're saying, nobody, a lot of people don't know how much to get in student loans.
Right.
Child, like you said, in college, you're getting what you can get, most people, unless
Right.
they have that guidance or that you're getting what you can get. And boy, if you get some back,
Right.
you're needing to like, and everybody doesn't always use it for the right thing, but like people need money. They don't
Right.
understand the cost that is gonna, incur on the other end. But at
Right.
that, and girl, I remember my freshman year in college. I don't know how it was on your campus. I was at USC Columbia at that time. Later, I came
Okay.
back to USC Aiken. But girl, people were on campus always with these credit cards.
Yeah, that was a big bad thing too. So then you end up with student loan debt, you end up with credit card debt.
Uh-huh.
They have changed a lot of the laws since 2009, where
Okay.
these credit card companies, they can't be on campus anymore. So if you go
Really?
now, they can't.
Okay.
Yeah, the kid has to have their own income and prove it,
Okay.
or they're not going to be able to get a credit card just as a student with no
Oh
income.
wow.
But they used to.
Okay.
It didn't matter if you was a
Oh
student,
no. It was a free for
you
all.
got a credit card. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
here, get it. I can give you a free backpack, a free pizza, whatever. It was a free for all. It was crazy, and a lot of the credit card companies, they preyed on students. And I remember I watched this documentary where I forgot what it was called, but it was all about credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
And Elizabeth Warren, she was part of this documentary. She was saying that I talked to several of these executives at credit card companies, and they said the most profitable companies were students. Why was it students? They were like, it was students because they're willing to pay the minimum balance, they're willing to pay the interest forever, and if they can't pay it themselves, mom and dad will always bail them out. That's why they were the most profitable customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I did okay for a while. I remember I got it and I'd pay it off. I made sure whatever I bought, I'd be able to pay the whole thing off for the month because I'm
Mhm.
like, I wanna build my credit. And that lasted maybe maybe 2 years. And then I lost my mind. And I didn't go crazy, crazy, but started hitting that minimum thing. That minimum thing,
Yeah.
and or being late, and that's what you don't want to
Right.
do. Again, there's not, and I, well, like you said, it's changed now and I'm grateful, but there just wasn't in our area a lot of access to education regarding these things. Now, yes, most 90% of the people can probably pick up a device because everybody's got cell phones. People that
Right.
don't have phones have cell phones. And so people can look now and find out what are the pros and cons, but still, sometimes even the theory or just reading doesn't translate to what it's going to look like in practicality. What is it going to look like in practice? How is this going to affect your life? So I'm glad that you said that even about the student loans and all, and just hoping even now, even just a few years ago, um because I don't teach in the public school system anymore, but even up to 2020, I did. And one of the things that I found was that our students, especially first generation college students, I felt really bad because as a high school teacher, I would see these kids who would tell when I'm like, "Well, darling, what do you want to do oh, I want to be a pediatrician," or "Oh, I want to
Mhm.
be an engineer." Baby, your GPA is like 2.1, and I'm not saying they can't, but what college you trying to get into? You know,
Right.
there's just this disconnect. And even when I taught um advanced comp, which was like a fifth year, those were the kids who had taken English 1 in 8th grade. And when they're in the 12th grade, they'd either take advanced comp or English 5, the AP class. And
Right.
so I had a lot of those kids in my class who were brilliant. They were so smart, but not when it came to applying for scholarships, not when it
Mhm.
came to applying for colleges. They had been in competition with just these, Silver Bluff is only so big anyway, and it may be even smaller now than it was when we were in school. I know at times the the number of students dropped to the 600s at times, I know. And so
Wow.
you're comparing yourself to the other, oh, you think I'm in the top 10. Go to one other high school in the district and you're out of there.
Right.
But there's just the mindset that they didn't know. So anyway, that's just like some things that, like you said, as we talk, hopefully we can do some things or create some awareness of
Right.
some of the things that are needed. I did do a little thing I just started, and it didn't last very long. I had some kids that I was able to get in there, but it was called Before You Go, You Need to Know. And I tried to gear it towards whether they went to technical school, a 4-year college, military, whatever. There are just some things you need to know before you leave. There are some
Right.
things. And so I would have guest speakers in and everything trying to help them.
Yeah.
And I really, that would be something good to do again, because as much as I love our counselors, there are a lot of kids out there failing and flailing, and they just don't know, especially even how, you know, one decision impacts your GPA, and then that
Right.
GPA impacts what you're able to get. So I know that was
Yeah.
a kind of long road that we found, but I think it's important, especially like I said, in areas like ours where there's not
Right.
a lot of talk about, and now I do know some organizations now that do something similar, and it's very good and it's very needed.
Yeah, well, kudos to you for bringing in people into your classroom to try to share sort of these life skills. Because you're right, I always felt like I was competing with people that had, a mom and dad with a college degree that was guiding them the entire way. And I even know people now where for their kids from middle school, that GPA is almost like on a dartboard. It's like this is what you need. These are the AP classes you need to take. You don't just need to get a 4.0, you need to be at a 4.5. I'm like, how can you get to a 4.5? Well, in high school, you can get more than that because you take all these extra classes, extracurriculars, and things like that. Things I had no idea about. So if you
Yes,
got mom and dad, aunts, uncles, or whatever people around you that do have a college education, or they have the resource and the knowledge and the experience to pour into you, you're
yeah,
going to be a lot stronger and a lot wiser than someone that doesn't have any of that and they're trying to do it on their own.
yes, yes,
So,
yes. So thank you for that. Thank you for highlighting that area, because I don't think that's something that has ever been brought up in one of our discussions here on the show. So as you did that 4th year, had your own place, where did you go after college? What was that like? Where'd you go?
Well, so while I was in college, my main full-time job was working at Walmart in Aiken, South Carolina. That paid the bills. I did almost everything at that store, but the last couple of years I was, they called it like a UPC clerk. It was basically working in the office, and it wasn't a job share, but I worked 8 hours in this one role, and there was another lady that worked 8 hours, and we would tag team. I would work every Saturday and Sunday, which was good for school, and then I would work 3 days a week. And
Okay.
so I can't even remember how I found out about this position in communications at Walmart headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas, but I knew
Yeah.
I had to take it
Okay.
because there was a lot of people. So I would have graduated in 1992 in college.
Okay.
And I do remember, my major was like broadcast journalism, and communications. And I interned at Channel 6. I remember that was a great experience. But back then, internships, that type of internship was not paid. So I'm working for free, but I did get college credit. So I appreciated that. And I
Mm.
just remember I really loved doing that job. And it was kind of funny because I remember they had a new weekend anchor that started. Her name was Tiffany Cochran, and that ended up
Uh-huh.
being Johnny Cochran's daughter. It was so funny.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that just how people's paths cross. I remember
Yeah.
the first weekend that she anchored. Her mother and daughter came, but Johnny Cochran, he never came. Although I didn't know him at all at the time, and the
Right.
O.J. Simpson thing had not even happened. But it was just so funny how those
Right.
things happen. But
Right.
so yeah, so my first job out of college was working in corporate communications at Walmart headquarters. So I had to move all the way to Bentonville, Arkansas. But again, at the time, I had other people that couldn't hardly find a job. So I felt like I didn't have the luxury to turn down this job. And it was obviously paying way more than the TV station because I was finally like working there on the weekend, but it was peanuts. I mean, I love doing it. And
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you've been blessed by today's show, feel free to let us know. And if you'd like to sow into this ministry, become a sponsor, or contact us, you can reach us at 803-221-0169. Or you can email us at the ssbbshow@gmail.com. Let's continue this journey together. We need and would love to have you as a sponsor. Absolutely no gift is too small. Please note the info regarding giving and help us spread these testimonies around the world.